This broadcast is the property of Codependents Anonymous. Reproduction without written permission from Codependents Anonymous is not permitted.
Welcome everyone to this forum on the 30 questions, a simple way to start working the steps. Our speakers will be Debbie, who is currently, Debbie from NorCal and Sally from NorCal. And take it away, ladies.
Hi, I'm Debbie W. from NorCal CoDA. I wanted to, and Sally, do you want to say hi?
Hi, I'm Sally from NorCal CoDA.
I wanted to let you know that I would like to spend about 10 or 15 minutes kind of reviewing the history of the 30 questions that was introduced to the CoDA Service Conference in 2018. And it was passed unanimously and approved as provisional literature for 1 year. And we will be asking for feedback from CoDA as worldwide. And that's the reason for this introduction of the literature. So I'd like to start off with a brief history of how it came and share my experience, strength, and hope. And then Sally's going to join in and share her experience, strength, and hope. And then we would also like to introduce to you the one-page document that was also unanimously approved provisionally called the 12 Tips for Sponsors. Can everyone hear me okay?
I can.
Okay. You can't answer. I apologize.
I can.
Yes.
I
Okay.
can.
Thank you. I am really pleased to be able to give you this information. So the first thing I want to tell you is that I began in CoDA in 1988. In 1988, we had CoDA had been an organization for just 24 months. We did not have any literature for our meetings, except we had adopted the 12 steps and 12 traditions for the purpose of Codependents Anonymous. We would use and study out of the AA Big Book, and we would change the word alcoholic to codependent and do our best to adapt it to learning to love the self and having a spiritual connection with our higher power. So as I began, I would read the CoDA literature, 12 Steps and 12 Traditions and the Promises every morning. And then I would read the 12 by 12 from Alcoholics Anonymous, and I would read the Alcoholics Anonymous Big Book. And I started that way, and I worked the steps with a step study group, and I just want to let you know that that was what we had. And then so when I began noticing that we started writing our own literature 3 or 4 years later, we started out with the pamphlets and the brochure, the meeting materials that we sell at literature. And then we started writing our stories, and we wrote the Blue Book, and that came out as the first edition. I love the Blue Book. I just want to let you know that I would watch newcomers come into the meetings, and it occurred to me that as they would show up as a newcomer, they would start sharing at meeting level what was going on with them. And they were sharing like a fifth step. They were admitting to God, themselves, and another human being the exact nature of what was going on in their life. So what I realized was that the newcomers were already doing step 5, and how do I get my sponsees to catch up and actually work step 1, 2, 3, and 4 so that they would have an effective, an effective experience with the steps. So my observation was that if they didn't work the steps, they were just hamster wheeling in their recovery, and they were just doing the same things over and over and again without progress. So I started asking my sponsees, to share with me, and then I'd worry about them. And I noticed that I'd become attached, and I'd actually have the struggle of the codependent relationship with the sponsee. So that as a recovering codependent was a challenge. The other thing I noticed was I would give them an assignment, like go and read the first chapter in the CoDA Blue Book and get back to me. And it was like too big of a assignment. And what eventually happened was it became obvious that a newcomer needed little tiny baby steps to get started. Where do we begin? So in 10 years later, and when was it? No, it was in 2008 that in Northern California, we had a panel of 4 sponsors that had been in the program more than 5 years and had been sponsoring others. And then we each shared for 10 minutes on how we did our sponsoring. And then we had people in the workshop ask us questions. None of the sponsors actually rehearsed it. We just showed up, and what came out of that was one of the sponsors would meet with her sponsee like once a month or once a week, and they would review the steps. But she could only work with 1 or 2 sponsees at a time because of a time constraint. We had another gentleman who sponsors others, and he had a plan where he wanted the sponsee to know what the program of Codependence Anonymous consists of, and to have them do these 8 things and check it off the list. And so he had like a very organized, methodical way of working the steps and also working the program. The third thing that was shared was that there was a group of people in the Fresno area that were sponsors, and they were sponsoring others, and they had 3 and 4 generations of sponsees in CoDA that were really working the steps and supporting each other and being there for each other. And I had not heard of this before. So I shared my experience, strength, and hope, and some of my frustrations, and how each sponsee seemed to need a little bit different path. And so at the end of this, I contacted each one of these other sponsors, and I said, can you share with me what you're doing that's working for you? And I got a copy of the checklist that the one sponsor had, and I also got a copy of what they were doing to work these little baby steps. And I said, can you please email that to me? Lo and behold, these little baby steps were the 30 questions from Alcoholics Anonymous that had been passed around, not per se AA literature, but it had been passed around for 20, 30 years. And I said, it was John in Fresno. I said, hey, John, these point to the AA Big Book, not how do we get them to point to our CoDA Blue Book? And he laughed and he said, hey, Deb, looks like you have a project to work on. So in 2008, I took the model from the 30 questions that's been working for a long time to get a newcomer started in AA and adapted it to our literature, to the CoDA Blue Book. So the 30 questions, like 10 of the questions ask the question of unmanageability and how did the codependency begin, and let's talk a little bit about the childhood, and let's talk about shame. And these questions point into our book the carefully crafted information that we have for our group. The middle 10 questions talk about how do we develop a relationship with a power greater than ourselves? What was it like growing up for you? And each question is like a little tiny breadcrumb that leads the sponsee on the path. And then the third 10 address step 3 and making a decision to turn our will and our life over to the care of a loving higher power. What I noticed was when I would give question number 1 to a sponsee, they could go inside and answer that question and dig deep and go deeper. And it was a gentle way for them to delve into a different level and of introspection. And so I started getting these wonderful, wonderful responses from the sponsees, and they started growing and they started progressing at their own way and at their own pace. But we were following the CoDA literature. So I'm going to wrap up the history part of it, but in 2008 is when this work came through me. I actually was honored because I really don't take credit for writing the 30 questions. I really think that this was an inspiration from higher power through me to go out into our fellowship and bless the world. I would just let you know that this is not the only way to work with the sponsee, but it is an easy way to get them started. And so in 2008, it came through. In 2009, we introduced it to the Greater Sacramento CoDA community. They approved it 100%, put it in addition to the 12 steps and 12 traditions and promises. They also included this in the welcome packet that was given out to newcomers in our community. In 2010, it was introduced to NorCal CoDA, and NorCal CoDA took the literature from the 30 questions and it was posted on our website. From 2010 until now, it has been distributed and worked by thousands and thousands of people starting the CoDA program and directing them to our CoDA Blue Book. I have noticed that it's changed people's lives, and it's such a blessing and an honor to be able to observe that. Along with the 30 questions, on the 4th page of this document is the grid that was introduced originally in that network, workshop with 4 sponsors. And so there's the checklist that a sponsee can go through and see what actually is the program of Codependence Anonymous. And it's all there. It's very simple. They can fill it out, take a personal inventory every day. Sometimes it's intimidating for other people. I don't push it, but if they're an engineer and they like to check off the boxes, then it's there for them. So I wanted to say that this came through in 2008, and 10 years later, it's been introduced to CoDA World. It was passed unanimously to be used amongst our fellowship to get our newcomers started. Sponsoring in CoDA has been difficult because we're all codependents. We all have control issues and we all have avoidance issues. And we have, So this has been working for me. I'm glad I can share it with you, and I'm here to answer any questions you may have. And that's the history. And Sally, do you have anything to add?
Yes, first I have to get off mute. About the 30 questions, I certainly do. Let's stick to the 30 questions for now, but let me give just a little bit of my own history of how I got into CoDA. I got into CoDA in a very organic manner, in that I spent a long time in another program, and when I was going to go get a chip, a 7-year chip, I asked my brand new boyfriend if he would be very interested in going with me just to see me get my chip. And he said, sure, I'll support you. And so he went with me to the meeting. And the following week I said to him, would you like to go with me to CoDA? And he said, no, I don't think so. And I said, okay, see you later. And the following week, I said, I'm on my way to CoDA. Would you like to come? And he said, no, I don't think so. And I said, I think I'd rather stay home with you. And a couple of months later, he heard the word codependent and announced to me, I think I'm codependent. I've been told I'm codependent. I need to go to Codependents Anonymous. And I said, oh, I'll go with you. And I'm still here. That was in 2001. Still here. He's not, but that's neither here nor there. The point being that it's a program that I found I really, really needed, and I'm very happy to be in it, but finding sponsors was really difficult. And being a sponsor was really daunting, because my history as a codependent is that I've messed up every relationship that I was ever in, and I didn't want to mess up another one, especially when there was this responsibility for another person's life hanging in the balance. And so I didn't try until I heard about the 30 questions. And when I heard about the 30 questions, I started talking about it in my group. And because my group is only women, people would come to me and I would say, oh, sure, give me a call and I'll give you the first question. And then we'll talk about it the next time you call, and I'll give you the next question. And gosh, it was so easy. I didn't feel so responsible. People were responsible for themselves. Darn it. It was just beautiful. And so using this method, I've been able to sponsor through the 30 questions, completing the 30 questions, about 40 to 43 people. I didn't keep records early on, and I'm not keeping records now. There's no hash marks on any of my walls, but I've also started probably twice as many people, and I feel like wherever I get with a sponsee, that's where they're supposed to be, and that's fine, because it's not my responsibility to run after somebody and tell them, you need to do this. That's not my job, but my job is to be available and to be very available and conscious when I'm doing it. So I've been in CoDA for quite a while, and I've been using the 30 questions for quite a while, and I love them because, as I say, it's a structure that I don't have to be in control of. And so what was the question, Debbie?
I just wondered if you would be willing to share about the 30 questions and how it worked for you.
I guess I was. I guess I was.
Would you
think that what we ought
explain
to
to them
now
what...
is talk about the 30 questions perhaps, and see if there's anybody on the call who has an interesting question about the 30 questions that we can address.
I was wondering first, before we do that, if you could introduce the concept of having question holders, and
sure.
Also the power of 5 that it introduces in the 30 questions.
Of course, I'd be very happy to talk about that. Okay, so question holders are people who are willing to be called at some time in order to give a new question to a person who is doing the calling. And the way that the 30 questions were set up in Northern California, in GSAC, in Greater Sacramento CoDA organization, was that this list of names of people who are willing to be called, who are holding the questions, can be called by anybody at almost any time. And the caller, the first question they ask is, or the first thing they say is, "Hi, my name is blah, blah. I am calling regarding the 30 questions. Is this a good time to call and ask for the next question?" And then it's up to the person who's answered the phone to say, "Yes, this is a good time," or, "Oh, I'm very sorry, it's not a good time," throwing the responsibility back on the caller, and who then can call the next person on the list and the next person on the list, which gives us a little bit more power over that 500-pound phone, too, in order to find someone who can give them an answer to the question, or a question to answer. Then answering the question is the next point, and that can be the way that I work with my folks is I say you need to time yourself. Think as long as you want, but time yourself when you do your writing. And when the timer goes off, stop writing, even if it's in the middle of a word. Other sponsors have other ways of doing it. I believe the way the 30 questions were set up originally in Greater Sacramento was that there are 30 questions. There are 30 days in every month, whether there are 31 days or not. There's still 30 days in every month except for February. And so one person should look at one question a day and take a brief period of time, no longer than half an hour, to actually write about the answer. Then when that person is calling a question holder for the next question, they can choose to share their answer and get some feedback or not. But they can pick up the next question and continue on in that way. That's the way that Greater Sacramento had set up the 30 questions for Codependence Anonymous. So
I wanted to tag on to that real quickly.
Sure.
And that is that's the way it was set up, 30 questions in 30 days, but that's really not the way it ever worked out. And if a sponsee would answer the question, I would ask them to think about it for at least 24 hours. And then we would set up a time to talk the next day or in the next couple of days. But life would happen, and sometimes weekends they had things to do in their life, and I had things to do in my life. If I wasn't available, they could call the question holder the next, on the list and get the next question if they wanted to move faster than I was available. But the only thing I wanted to say was when the newcomer is writing, I would just listen to what they had written down, not judge it, just say, "Good job, good job, here's the next question." So whatever they did was perfect for them. If it was a little bit of writing or a lot of writing, it was perfect for them in the time allowed, and then we moved to the next question. And
yes,
does that make sense?
That's good. But I would only give feedback if feedback was requested.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there was some point in the question that they were concerned about and they were asking for some help. Then under those conditions, I might be able to give some feedback, telling my story.
I only offered feedback sparingly, especially when they were in the first 10 questions, mainly because they were on step 1 and their life was probably really unmanageable, and I just tried to get them to the next question and then the next question so they could move through that. Okay, so
Well, like I said,
You have more feedback?
Different people have different ways of approaching the use of 30 questions as well. So, this is a very cogent example for everyone about how that works. Let me see. The next thing was, I always tell my sponsees, think about the question as long as you want. I did have one sponsee who zipped through 30 questions in less than 30 days. Mm-hmm. And that felt a little overwhelming to me. So I adjusted how I introduced the 30 questions to people.
Mm-hmm. I like them to take one question at least a day, so it goes deeper in their subconscious, and there's a real healing that happens when we just ask these gentle questions and move them to the next reading. Ask them to read 4 or 5 pages and then write about it. It's so nice, such a nice flow, and it's using all of our wonderful CoDA literature. I wanted to also just say
that's the beautiful part of it.
Yeah, I wanted to tell you that it's my experience that the Blue Book is like cheesecake. You can only take a little bite of it at a time because it's so rich. It's so full of good stuff. And I have tried to rush through reading the CoDA literature, and I get overwhelmed. So I like the approach of being able to take a little bit at a time. Okay, do you have anything else to add? And then we can move on to the tips.
About the 30 questions, I'm just, yes, I do have something to add. They are on the website, but I don't think that they're open for general viewing at this point because we on the board and we of the CSC are not asking for general feedback, but feedback from delegates who are to take the 30 questions to their intergroups and disperse them that way. So they are not although they are really everywhere. I mean, we've had people give feedback from India, from Iran, from all over England, from all over South America, from Australia, about the 30 questions, and more places as well, about the 30 questions. And so it's not like they're a secret anymore, but this particular version is being vetted by delegates, and the way that they choose to spread the information out into their voting entities so that we can have them approved for general distribution. Then when they are approved for general distribution, they will be available on the website as PDFs for download, as service items. So
thank you, Sally.
If you have anyone who's on this call, if you have a connection to an intergroup or a voting entity delegate, that's how you can get a copy of the 30 questions so that you can see them for yourself right now. But otherwise, you can just be patient and wait, because our CSC will be in September in Atlanta, and I predict that they will be approved wholeheartedly, if not unanimously, and then they will be available to the entire fellowship. And that's what I've got to say on that.
Thank you. I know
you're very welcome. Okay, so now
we were going to have questions at the end of this recording.
Good.
Is that still happening, that we'll have questions at the end?
How do you want to run it, Linda? Do you want questions about the 30 questions now, or do you want to do only at some time in the future at the end of this meeting?
Ladies, this is your presentation. You are ones that get to decide that.
I would like to review the 12 tips for sponsors, and I would appreciate it, Sally, if you would read them out loud to this recording.
Oh, that's what I planned on doing. Yes, that's exactly what I plan on doing. Good.
And then after that, I would feel comfortable opening it up to questions. How do you feel about that?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay, so the 12 tips for sponsors, and as a preface and background to this, as you listen to these 12 tips, remember the 12 steps, remember the 12 traditions, remember the 12 promises. These are the 12 tips for sponsors are parallel to those, particularly closely parallel to the steps. And I'm sure that the people who adapted these tips for sponsors were sitting with the steps right beside them, because some of the language and certainly the gist of them is so directed from, all of this is God directed, is higher power directed, but these 12 tips are there. I hear my higher power's voice. So tip number 1 is, you are powerless over your sponsee, and your sponsee's life is unmanageable by you. Neither of you would be in CoDA if you didn't have problems with codependency. And I will come back and riff a little on each of these, but right now I'm just putting them into the record. Tip number 2, you aren't in charge. Your sponsee's higher power is. Believe that a power greater than either one of you can restore your sponsee to sanity. Tip number 3, make a decision at the beginning of your relationship with your sponsee to turn the sponsee's will and life over to the care of a power greater than either one of you. Tip number 4, be honest with yourself about your relationship with your sponsee. This is a great opportunity to observe your own behavior in a relationship. Tip number 5, admit to your higher power, yourself, and your own sponsor when you don't know what to do. Tip number 6, be ready to change things that aren't working. Your schedule, the literature you work with, the response you give when your sponsee keeps bringing up the same problem. Tip number 7, before meeting with your sponsee, you might find it helpful to say a prayer such as this: higher power, use me to say whatever it is you want my sponsee to hear today. Tip number 8, it is all right to make mistakes. You are not in charge of your sponsee's recovery. Your sponsee's higher power is. Tip number 9, if you feel you've given a bad direction or suggestion, let the sponsee know. Tip number 10, it's all right if the relationship doesn't last. You may realize after a while that you are not able to work with a particular sponsee for whatever reason. Tip number 11, seek through prayer and meditation to understand your higher power's will for you in your role as sponsor. Pray for the power to carry out that role. Number 12, remember that you are carrying the message of recovery, nothing else. Take satisfaction from any sponsee who comes to understand and believe in the CoDA program of recovery.
Thank you.
So back through my personal paraphrase of step 1 is I can't. And here again, you are powerless over your sponsee. Number 2, maybe somebody else can. You're not in charge. The higher power is there. And step number 3 says, let him or her. Let it. Let that higher power take care of you. So make a decision at the beginning. Step number 4 is the list of stuff. Step number 5 is share the list. Step number 6 is be ready to let go of what doesn't work. Step number 7 says, ask your higher power to help you make those changes, to take that away. Step 8 is prepare to make amends. And if you don't recognize that you make a mistake, you don't know that you need to make amends. So be ready within your sponsorship relationship, be ready to recognize when you've made a goof. Because, I mean, you're a human being, right? We are all human beings. And number 9 is make those amends. Let the sponsee know, I'm about that thing I told you the other day. I think maybe I made a mistake. So, let's talk about that a little bit more. Number 10 is keep it clean, do it quick, make sure that as you recognize something, make sure that you're okay with that. And if for one reason or another this particular relationship doesn't last, don't kill yourself over it. You didn't fail. You got them through the, as far as they went in the 30 questions, and that may have been the right place for them at the time. Don't hurt yourself because you didn't do a perfect job. My God, that's why we're here. And number 11 is prayer and meditation to make sure that we're, doing it as well as we can. And number 12 is carry the message. That's what we're doing. We're just carrying the message. And we're trying to live these steps, live this life as clean as we possibly can as a model for all of those who watch us, even the people who don't know zip about 12-step. They also can see us living a clean life and wonder why. And that's how we attract. Okay, I'm finished.
Thank you, Sally. Okay, I suggest that we open it up for questions. And I'm not sure how to moderate the muting and unmuting and questions. Can Linda help or Nicole?
I can unmute everyone, or people can come as they want to ask. Just press *6.
Okay, we're open for questions. Does anyone have a question about the work of the 30 questions or the 12 tips for sponsors?
This is Nancy O. Debbie, I'd like to ask you, what is I think you mentioned it already. There's an option of giving all the 30 questions directly to people or giving them to people one at a time. And with your experience, have you ever given them all out at once and seen that, well, I think somebody mentioned they went through them within, less than 30 days. It is your recommendation that you keep these kind of private and just give them one question at a time.
That's a really great question, Nancy. And the way that it's been set up this time that we're presenting it is, it's not only being presented for a one-on-one sponsor-sponsor relationship, but also can be used as co-sponsoring and also as a group working these questions, say at a meeting or together as a writing group. So I've released attachment to saying there's no right or wrong way to work 30 questions. However, it's been my experience that I developed a really sweet and fulfilling relationship with my sponsee when we talk every day and I give them the next question, I also feel that it's important to dictate 3 or 4 words, have the sponsee write that down in their own handwriting, in their own journal. It goes through their eyes and their ears, their hands. It goes deeper into their subconscious. And as they write out this question, 2 or 3 words at a time, then they say, okay, I'm ready for the next. I dictate the question to them. Then they read it back to me and they ask for, are all the words correct? There's a technique or a skill that's involved in that, and it's like, did I hear what you said? Did I accurately hear what you had to say? And then I help them correct any words that, sometimes I've noticed that we make up words that nobody said, but we heard them, and then we go off on a tangent, and our codependency shows up. But what I really like is that the sponsee write down the question in their own handwriting, in their own journal, and it becomes a personal work for them. Did that answer your question, Nancy?
Sorry, I put it on mute again, and it always takes a few seconds to be able to come back. Yeah, I think that you've given me your perspective on it. I just wondered whether or not you had experience with giving it all to them at once versus the other. And I heard you say that that's a personal choice, and you've seen it used in many different ways. And I really thought it quite intriguing. Yes. You mentioned, doing it as a group.
Yes, doing it as a group. And I have worked with sponsees that rush and want to do it all so quickly. I had a sponsee contact me from Estonia. She had already completed the first 12 questions and retranslated them from Estonian into English back into Estonian. And I asked her if she would be willing to, not rush so fast. And she really felt the need to rush, to go through them, to be able to check them off. I'm not judging her recovery, but it was how she preferred to do it. I would have liked to have taken one little piece at a time with her. But yes, the 30 questions have been available in, all together. I think it can be worked, but I think it would be rushed. I really like them to be done no more than one a day, in my experience. Thanks, Nancy.
And if I can just jump in here, I have one student who picked up the questions for herself, and she's going at her own pace, about one question or 2 questions a week. Even though she can read ahead, she's still doing one question at a time, calling me and talking about it. So I think it's pretty much up to how the sponsee is, what they're willing to do, how they're willing to handle it. There is a little bit of control involved in being able to give those questions out. I used to dictate to people, and yes, there is a visceral connection to the questions and the words when you actually write them down on a paper or type them into your own Word document. And I prefer handwriting, but many of my people, my sponsees have not lately been interested in that. So what I will do is I will copy and paste into a separate email and send one question at a time too. There are so many ways to use this beautiful tool.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you,
Did
ladies.
that answer your question, Nancy?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Someone else have a question?
Yeah, I do. My name Hi, my name is Sandy, and I've seen that this takes the sponsee through steps 1 through 3. And so how do you move beyond that third step when you're done with all 30 questions?
Oh, I am so glad you asked that, Sandy, because we, the same group who wrote the 30 questions did write 95 additional questions for step 4. Because the questioning, the questioning is a process of doing something, and the rest of the steps are preparing to do something and then actually doing a single action. And so questions don't reflect the need so much on that one. But instead of 90 questions, what we are trying to do is we're trying to cut that down into a little bit more manageable bites. And thinking that it's step 4, what has been done is that the 95 questions have been edited into 40 questions, and they are being beta tested, and feedback is coming back on them. And so they have to go through at least 2 more drafts of editing, and then we will be presenting those to CSC as well for the 4th step.
Great.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, this is Sharon.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. I did have a question. I have used them both as a writing group. I've been in a writing group where we use the 30 questions. And I've usually just given out the questions, and I have had no problem with that, where people kind of went at their own pace. I do have a question about who gets to look at these questions, because, in Canada, we now, I think, have 2 intergroups, right? And so how do you spread, but there's many active members, and you think about other international countries, and you want to get some feedback from them as well, because you want to make this an international thing. I'm wondering if saying that only intergroups should have them and then they give them out is kind of narrowing that.
This was decided by the CSC on how to disperse and allow availability to them. And so yes, you're right. There is no perfect way to get feedback, except to publish in the New York Times and have everybody give us feedback. But it is what it is. I hate that. I hate it when people say that, but it is what it is. And so that's the way it's standing for the time being. But if you have a concern about that, please write to board@CoDA.org with an alternative way for dispersing the information, if you would.
Yeah, I can see taking the voting entity. See, the thing is that you're talking about, you're doing it because you want the delegates to vote on it. But there's a lot of countries that can't afford to go to CSC. The airfare is expensive, the hotels are expensive, and they may not even be allowed into the United States. So
I'm so glad you mentioned that too, because for next CSC, the board has already approved a budget for doing an international, at least previously, to do an international disbursement of the CSC motions that are being presented by voting entities here to all groups who are in the process of translating the coded literature into their own group, into their own language, so that the translation group, because it's not we're not allowing an individual to do a translation. We have to be a representative group of the language. And as a representative group, they become a voting entity, and we are trying to figure out a way to make CoDA really, truly international, and allowing those people to be involved. And in 2020, not in 1919, but in 2020, we will be in Canada for our CSC. And during that year, it is the board's intention and goal that there will be not only before the CSC information dispersed and votes accepted, but also that there will be interactive during the CSC itself online if possible, so that those people who cannot travel for any reason can be involved. Thank you for allowing me to share that info.
That's great. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
To be able to tell you.
Okay, and I have to leave because I've got another situation, but thank you so much for answering that, and I will listen when the streaming comes. Thank you.
Excellent.
Hi, Sharon.
Thank you.
Hi, this is Carol from Ottawa.
Hi, Carol. Hi, Carol.
Can you hear me from Ottawa?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks. So I'm on the steering committee with Sharon, and I think she's now off. But my question would be like piggybacking hers. So I have so Ottawa's in Ontario. We have 3 outreach volunteers. So we have a little intergroup of our own, and but we're not voting entities. We've been privy to the 30 questions because we sit on the committee, on the steering committee. But so would it be prudent for us or possible for us to bring this back to our home groups in our respective cities?
Absolutely. That's my opinion. Yes, and I think that's a wonderful idea. And yes, I will do my best. For those people who are on this call, please feel free to write down this email address. CDAWN for CoDA. It's S as in Sam, EADAWN, number 4, CODA @gmail.com. So it's CDAWN for CoDA @gmail.com. That's my direct email address. And if you put 30 questions in the, or 30 questions question, or somehow indicate that you're talking from the forum presentation, I would be very happy to take all of that information, gather it together. I will take it to the Board of Trustees at our next formal meeting, which will be at the beginning of February, and all of the questions, all of the suggestions that are involved in that will be, I promise you, will be answered. I have my hand up in the air right now. And I will also make it possible for those people who request to have a copy of the 30 questions to look at with their group, whether they're a voting entity or not. And I know I'm outstepping my bounds. I'm sorry, Linda. I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry.
Thank you, Sally. There's someone who's got their hand up, and I think there's at least one more person who've been trying to ask a question. Acer, A-C-E-R, you want to go ahead? Well, I know I saw someone else as well. Faith.
Hi, Linda.
Hi there.
I had a question whether the tips that she mentioned were written down anywhere.
Faith, can you repeat the question? I think the whole. Yeah, please repeat the question.
Are the tips that you mentioned at the end, are they written down anywhere? I couldn't find them on the website.
Yes, they are written. That is a second document that is available with the 30 questions. If you are interested in having the tips for sponsors, I will do the same thing. I will be very happy to forward them to anybody who is on this call who requests them. So again, take down my email address. It's CDAWN for coda@gmail.com.
I put that email in the chat. Anyone who wants to can copy it.
Perfect.
Oh,
thank you. Because I'm tired of saying it.
Can I have a point of information here? This is Nancy O. The 30 questions as well as the 12 tips are actually on the CoDA website, available for anybody to look at under Info to Members. If you go to the bottom of the CoDA.org website and go to Info for Members, click on that, there comes up Voting Entity Draft Literature for Review. Click on that, and you will see it on the bottom of the screen. So anybody can link into that and get those.
Excellent,
That's
Nancy.
fabulous.
Thank you so much for that information.
You're welcome.
There's
Thank
someone
you.
else who has their hand up. If Faith, are you satisfied? Because there's this other person whose hand is up.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you. I see ACER. Did you want to ask a question? Maybe that hand doesn't mean you want to ask a question. What about Maribel? Did you want to ask a question?
Hi. Yes, I do. Hi to Debbie and Sally and to everyone. I'm from
Hi,
North
Maribel.
Texas. Yes, you were actually at our state conference last year, and you shared the 30 questions. So thank you to that. We're actually going to start a step study, and was wondering how we can work those 30 questions within a group in a step study. Do you have, because I know it's been talked about with a sponsor and individually, but how can we work those as a step study? That's my question.
Okay.
Debbie, you want to take that one?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that you have a sign up for the 30 questions for this step study. Decide if it's going to be it doesn't really work as a drop-in. So I would gently ask that the participant commit to doing the work, even if they, can't come for 1 week, but they do the catch-up on the questions. So you stay as a group. Just my suggestion. You can do it any way that you are inspired by your higher power. But I think that having a commitment and a group set up and just begin and have it as like a writing step study. You ask the question and then allow about 15 to a half an hour to write, and then go around and read what came up for you in that writing. And then maybe take the next question, ponder it for a week, and come back and do the same thing with the next question. That's what I would suggest. I mean, one question a week is a little bit slow, but maybe choose 2 questions or 3 questions. I've not participated in a step study of the 30 questions personally, but I know other groups that have. And what's most important is that we develop healthy and loving relationships with each other, and that we don't try and work the steps all by ourselves. So that's what came up for me from that question. Did that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. That's a good way of going about it. I also wanted to ask the step 4 questions that are already being worked on. Is that, I know it's in the process of still being vetted, as you all said. Are we able to have access to that during that process?
If somebody is interested in doing those steps, doing the step with those questions, I'd be very happy to do it as a step study so that I can get some feedback from people and then take it to the group about for doing the editing. But I think that I don't really want to disperse those questions yet.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much for all of your information and help.
Maribel, I'd want to tag on to that fourth step question.
Okay.
And just say that even though this is an easy way to start working the steps, there are so many different ways to work step 4. We can work step 4 right in the blue book. It's right there. It's already written. If we just take one paragraph at a time and do that with each other, the work has already been done in the blue book. There's also the green workbooks that we can work step 4 in and keep working the steps. There's CoDA has the little 12 by 12 handbook that a lot of us have been reading at meetings. Like we'll do step 1 in January, step 2 in February, and go and read that step for that month. There are so many ways to work the rest of the steps. So there's no right or wrong. So this is just a way to work the steps, and it just happens to be an easy way to start working the steps. So thanks for listening.
All righty. Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
Someone is in the chat who's had their hand up in the participants. She's having trouble with audio. So, sorry, I thought that the hand was up to ask a question.
Can she type the question in the chat and then we can read it out loud and answer the question?
Yeah, actually, it's a question of how to... Hang on. Yeah. I don't know if she can hear us. She must be able to hear us. So sometimes you have to sign out and sign in again. For some reason that happens. I think it happened to one other speaker earlier. One other participant earlier today. I'm sorry. Yeah.
It just proves that technology is not perfect and therefore it must be codependent.
Right.
She just advised us that in the chat room that yes, she can hear us.
Okay.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. So would you please type your question into the chat and we will be happy to answer your question.
Looks like Lou has a question in the meantime. Yeah?
Yeah, this is Lou, and I do have a comment more than a question. And I think one of the beauties of the 30 questions is that it gets people starting to work in the idea of working a step and what it takes to work a step. And it allows for relationships to be built. And then you can get to done with 30 questions and you say, okay, who have I developed a relationship with that I'm willing to do step 4 with and maybe work the rest of my steps with? And I see it as a beautiful tool for an entry into the steps for people who are coming into a program who they know they need help, but they have no idea how to get it. And so kudos. Thank you so much for the work and the history behind it. That was very interesting. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Lou. Appreciate it.
I see someone else with a mic open who may have a question. And it seemed like for a minute there, Acer had audio. I don't know if that's true. Somebody from the 289, I don't know if you wanted to ask a question.
Can I be heard?
Yes, we hear you.
Oh, can I share real quick? Or somebody else can start?
Go ahead.
Oh, hi, this is Acer JB.
Hi, Acer.
Hi, Acer.
I took your suggestion and logged back out, so it worked. First and foremost, I would like to say that I'm truly blessed to be a spiritual witness on this journey with all of you. And I've been around the block for a while in CoDA, about 18 and a half years. And it was interesting. I've participated in many step studies out of the Green Workbook. And when I selected to embrace the 30 questions as an old timer, what I deliberately did was there was a newcomer who was one of Sally's sponsees who completed the 30 questions. And so I chose as an old timer to have her guide me through the 30 questions to pass it forward. And it was an amazing experience. And so we just did it via email since life happened. And I strongly suggest people to consider that. You know, I thought about giving her the gift as well, you know, to kind of reverse it. And it was amazing. So that was, and then we had a chance to have the three-way relationship, sponsee, sponsor, and higher power. And I would like to end with this. A spiritual teacher quoted, "When you get, give. When you learn, teach." And this is what we're doing all together. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you very much.
I wanted to also, because of what was just said, is to say that I have sponsored on email numerous times. I have texted the questions and then had the phone conversation at the agreed upon time. I've done Skype. I've just determined that whichever way is going to work for that sponsee works for me if I can fit it in. And having a consistent time to talk, like I have one sponsee right now that it's like 8:30 in the morning works for her and works for me. And then I have another sponsee in Russia, and we're using the WhatsApp, and she will call me at like noon my time, and it's 11 p.m. in Russia, and she will share what she had written, and then I'll give her the next question. So, and then we'll do all of our other communicating in texting on WhatsApp. So there are so many different ways to keep in communication, and the steps are such a beautiful part of our recovery. And the Blue Book has been written in such a way that we as codependents can really learn from each other, and it's, sharing our experience, strength, and hope. So that's what I have to say. Thanks.
Okay, I want to jump in here and say something, and that this is Sally again, and I'm so blessed by this program every day. My favorite line from the welcome says, we all know how to survive life, but in CoDA we're learning to live life. And not only am I learning to live life, but I'm being given the best of friends and the best of family members. I've been adopted and adopted so many people through this program, and it's just making me cry to be on this call. To have been asked to be on this call is another form of the blessing, and I thank you all for being here, because you're what makes CoDA so good. And with that, I'm off the soapbox.
Mm-hmm. And I will say thank you for inviting me to share my experience, strength, and hope. And I am very humbled to be a part of this process, and very honored that we have been able to help so many people through sharing this work the last 10 years.
And I think that's a wrap.
Amen.
I think one person may have a question. Patrice, did you want to ask a question? You have to do *6.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I wasn't sure what I was doing. I just made a comment saying that I'm new, and I've attended a few meetings, and I'm gonna go to 2 different meetings in addition to the 2 that I've attended twice. And I'm interested in having a sponsor, but I have no idea how to go about that.
They are, hi, this is Debbie again. Sponsors in CoDA have been difficult. Working the 30 questions makes it easy. Do you find someone in that meeting, Patrice, that you admire their sense of serenity or how their recovery is coming along? You could give them a copy of the 8-page document of the 30 questions and ask them to be your sponsor, and they will have an easy way to sponsor you. It's just that simple. Or you could co-sponsor each other and call each other at a certain time of the day. And it's a wonderful way to get started. And no one is responsible for anyone else's recovery. We are all depending on our higher power to guide us along this path and
Right.
to heal the unhealed places inside of each one of us.
That sounds wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
And simple.
And simple. Any other questions?
Yep, I have a question. Just more of a comment, I guess. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you.
Yes.
Hi, it's Debbie M. from Riverview, New Brunswick, Canada. Just wanted to say, after listening to your presentation, that it's a great opportunity and an option for us in Canada to look at helping so many of our participants in our meetings that are looking for sponsorship. You know, we daily, weekly get calls, emails, texts from people asking for sponsors. And in Canada, we don't have a lot of sponsors. And I think that this is a great option for us in Canada to start talking about in terms of putting the 30 questions out there and to start helping people that are so desperately in need of help and wanting sponsors so desperately. So you've given me a bit of hope today that maybe there's another route to this issue of sponsorship shortage in Canada. And I thank you for your presentation.
There you go.
Thank you for sharing that. I always wondered how I could sponsor more than 1 or 2 people at a time. And there was a time if I spent 15 minutes with each person, every day or every other day, that I could sponsor 10 women. I could. And if I wasn't available, if I had to go out of town or if I was sick, I could have someone else with the questions move my sponsee along so that I wasn't feeling like I was letting them down. They were on the path. They were working in their own way and at their own pace. And I wasn't holding them up, and I wasn't pushing them faster than they wanted to go. So, yeah, it turned out to be a real sweet way to sponsor others without me becoming codependent myself.
That is such an important point because, as I said earlier, we have messed up so many relationships. We're really reluctant to sponsor people, but this is the way that we can sponsor without putting ourselves in integrity, in jeopardy.
In jeopardy, yeah.
In jeopardy.
I know when I'm getting the codependent crazies. I know when I start obsessing about my sponsee that I'm off track. When thoughts of them are waking me up in the middle of the night, I wonder if we should talk about the inner child work, or maybe we should talk about boundaries now, or maybe we should talk about the grieving process then I remember that these questions gently guide them along the path, and all of those points will reach all of those destinations in their own way and at their own pace. I don't have to worry where they're at or control their journey. It's there for them. It's all there for them.
Thank you for that, Debbie. I just wanted to reiterate what Debbie from Riverview said. This is Nancy O. from St. John, New Brunswick. I'm just really, what I really enjoyed about what you said, and it was very hopeful, is the idea that we don't have to say a whole lot to people when we use these 30 questions. When you were giving your introductory comments, you said, whatever they say is perfect. And you just need to say, great job, good job, and then give them the next question. And how freeing is that? It takes away that whole fear of, well, what else do I need to do? And am I doing it right? Which is the biggest problem with people who are starting out in the program and wondering whether or not they should sponsor. They just, well, I don't know how to. I mean, there really isn't a lesson book on how to learn to become a sponsor. And if it's as simple as agreeing to move someone through 30 questions and then hopefully down the road another 40 and maybe another 40 after that, that's really, it's certainly a lot less of a cumbersome concept of having to take on to become a sponsor.
It's so simple. Thank you for your comments about that. Thank you very much. Does anyone else want to share?
Linda, is there somebody who's got their hand up or something?
Nope. It's all quiet on the participant front. Maybe it's time to wrap, although I see somebody in the chat. Oh.
And I was wondering if we could complete this with the closing prayer or the Serenity Prayer, or even I would really enjoy it if we did the third step prayer in the CoDA Blue Book.
Let's do it.
Okay. So this is Debbie W. from Northern California, and I would like to thank you all for being at this forum and to close this with the third step prayer on page 39 of the third edition of the CoDA Blue Book. God, I give to you all that I am. And all that I will be, for your healing and direction. Make new this day as I release all my worries and fears, knowing that you are by my side. Please help me. To open myself to your love. To allow your love to heal my wounds, and to allow your love to flow through me and from me to those around me. May your will be done this day and always. Amen.
Amen.